Hey, this is Justin. Today I'll go over how to record a time-lapse video. I'm recording this with my Sony FDR X3000 action cam. Time-lapse videos are where your camera takes photos at a regularly set interval, then you chain these photos together to make a video. These can look really cool, oftentimes for travel videos where you see scenes where it shows like 1 hour of time passing, and it'll be maybe like every 2 seconds it takes a photo. When you string them together, it makes a really cool video. So high FPS videos are great for slow-mo, but time-lapse videos are great for essentially fast-mo. When it comes to recording a time-lapse video, the most important thing to know is what to set the interval between photos to be. If you're recording something that's fast-moving or fast-changing, you'll want to have the intervals as quick as well, which would be 1 second, 2 seconds, maybe 5 seconds, depending. Like my example footage is of my archery class, and I set it for 2 seconds intervals, so that way I can see when they fire the bow, and then when they go down, you might get another photo, and when they're restringing and then firing, you get all that detail. But if I set it to say something like 15, that means I could potentially miss entire sets fired, so I wouldn't have that much detail. Now when it comes to something slow changing, say if it was 40 degrees outside and you put an ice cube out and we're recording it melting, in that case you'd want the interval to be really long, say 15 seconds. And then so that way it's not going to change a lot, so you don't need to have it recording every second, otherwise you're going to have tons of photos before it melts, and then it'll be really hard to manage. Another tip is that you should record 30 frames for each second of video you want. You do this so that way when you put the photos together in a video editor and set it for each photo to 1 frame per second, you get 30 frame per second video. This is good because you'll get a fluid video, and if you're recording a fast subject particularly, if you go higher frame rates, it's actually harder to see the changes because it's just too quick for your eyes. Additionally, something I figured out when I was going to make this video is that if you have it at 30 frames per second, it's really easy to scale it to other frame rates and just doubling the length that you show the photos to, say, 2 frames per photo compared to doing 1 frame when you increase the overall frame rate of the project. Because when I was recording this, my camera set to 60 frames per second recording, and then my time-lapse video was going to be 30 frames per second, so I just ended up the program actually doubled the length for me when I switched the overall project to 60 frames per second. So that way, if you're recording a time-lapse video along with other footage and you put it together, it's really easy to scale because typically you're going to be in 30, 60, 90, or 120 FPS recording. So in order to know how long to record, you'd want to do this formula, which is your desired duration in seconds multiplied by 30, which will be how many frames you record, and then multiplied by the interval you're recording. So for example, if you wanted to record 15 seconds of a time-lapse video and your interval is set to 2 seconds interval, then you do 15 times 2 by 30, which would be ended up being 900 seconds, which goes to 1 minute per second. In order to know how many photos you're taking, in case you're concerned about memory, is that you can multiply the desired duration by the frame rate, and that will tell you how many photos you take. So in the above example, since it's 30 frames for 15 seconds, it'll be 450 photos. Now, if you don't know the desired duration, say if you're just recording an event or a scene and you're just unsure how long it's going to be, it can give you a good idea. Say if you're going to record for roughly 15-20 minutes at 30 frames per second, you might be taking like over 1,000 photos. In fact, my example video I recorded for about I think 50 minutes, and I ended up with like 1,800 photos, which fortunately my laptop has enough power to edit. So But yeah, if you need to be careful because you don't want it to be so many photos, it can be really difficult to manage. Yeah. So my video footage is my archery class, and I recorded at a 2-second interval, and then I initially was going to just do the time lapse at 30 frames per second, but since I forgot that this video recorded on my camera will be 60 frames per second, I doubled the length that the frames show, so that way it'll be smooth for the rest of the video project. And also, the last 4 frames, I set it to 1 second each, just to for when it ends, to just give a little cool effect. So that's how to do a time-lapse video. Give a like if you enjoyed the video or if it helped you. Alright, this video is in post. I wanted to quickly go over how to actually make the time-lapse video. So typically, I already did my time-lapse video and then made this video, but typically you'd want to do the time-lapse video first if you're going to include it with other stuff, but you first, after you have all the photos in your camera, you make a folder somewhere in your computer, and then for those photos, and then move them there. You don't want it to be mixed in with other photos because it can be really hard to go through that folder again until you get rid of all these extra photos, since this is about 1,700 photos. And then once you have them in your computer, you'll want to go into your program and then import them into your project. I'm using PowerDirector 15. And then, so what you do is once it's in your project, I don't know how it would be for whichever program you're using, you scroll down, and then a quick tip is you select the first one, hold down shift, select the last one, you select everything in between, and that works in most places on your computer, like even here. I can shift, and it'll keep selecting everything. And then, and once you move it over, you want to make sure that there's nothing else in the timeline when you are editing your time-lapse video, and then what you do is you can select all, like if you Control A when there's just the photos, and then you do duration. Typically when you import the photos the first time, like at least in PowerDirector 15, it's a 5-second interval, so it'd be, if this would be 5 seconds and this would be 0, 0, but in this case I'm doing it 2 frames per photo, and with 2 frames per photo, it'll, since this is the rest of the project 60 frames per second, this will give it the look of a 30 frame per second video, which is what I wanted, and that's what I was talking about earlier about scaling. So if I ended up having 120 frame per second video as well, it'd be easy to scale. And yeah, and then so you do like set duration on all of them, and then that's how you would actually make the time-lapse video. So if I go here and hit play, also I added music. Hold on. Yeah, I added music because the time-lapse, since these are all photos, there's no audio, so it's good to not have that dead silence where you're watching the video, because otherwise it gets kind of awkward. So yeah, that's just some quick tips on actually making the video once you have it recorded, or the photos recorded.